There's going to be some documentation of what took place.
I mean, we have no plans to do kind of a closing DOGE report.
The Department of Government Efficiency will not issue a closing report when it officially ended July 4th. Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vogt saying the $5,000 rebate checks that was once floated for taxpayers also never came. Welcome back to the States. In February 2025, President Donald Trump and then advisor Elon Musk, they floated sending taxpayers 20% of DOGE's savings, an idea that originated from another supporter. Now, there were some big numbers that were thrown around, including rebates that were supposed to go to taxpayers. Joining us to discuss this and whether those efforts were successful and whether there were failures is the Center Square's Brett Rowland. Brett, thanks for taking time with us. What kinds of savings does this initiative tout?
So DOGE's website, which you have to remember hasn't been updated since January 1st, their savings claims specifically, they tout $215 billion in savings. But there's no real verification for that, so it's hard to really quantify beyond what Congress actually approved in the rescission package, and that was $9.4 billion for scope and size.
So you're talking $230+ billion. It sounds like a lot of money. I mean, that's way more than what Illinois spends every year. Not quite as much as California spends every year, but in the grand scheme of the overall federal budget, that's just a drop in the bucket, right?
Right. I mean, it works out to about $1,300 per taxpayer. So there's substantial savings in there if those numbers prove true. We can't totally verify them, but it is a savings. And if the costs were what the government has said they are, and the savings are what they've said they are, the taxpayers did save money from this.
So what about those rebate checks? You said $1,300 per taxpayer. Are we going to see that sometime soon?
No, I don't think so. So even back right when Musk and Trump sort of floated this idea of giving back some of the money, Speaker Johnson broke with both of them very quickly, and he did so at CPAC and said, essentially, we've got to use this money to pay down the debt. So either way, these checks aren't coming now. As you know, Greg, Trump has pivoted to talking about $2,000 taxpayer checks from tariff revenue, although I haven't heard that for months either. So those, I think, are very much in question as well.
So what are public policy researchers saying about the DOGE effort? Because, I mean, listen, whenever it splashed on the scene, it was such a big issue. Everybody was talking about it. And even in states, people were encouraging their state legislators to have some kind of DOGE effort to find waste, fraud, and abuse. But what do the public policy researchers have to say about these?
So I got to two great sources. I talked with David Walker. He ran the GAO. He served as a U.S. Comptroller General for more than a decade. His take was essentially that DOGE grossly overstated how much money they saved, and he also pointed out that only Congress can cut the budget, and that ties back to that $9.4 billion rescission package, which was basically tied to DOGE's findings. So there's real savings there.
Real savings, but I mean, we were told $2 trillion could possibly be carved out of the budget. That's a substantial amount of money. What do you think were some of the problems of getting to that $2 trillion number?
Well, one, I think that Musk really overestimated on what he could save. In terms of what Congress actually has control over and what the executive branch has control over, those are smaller numbers. So if you look at like total discretionary spending, I mean, he would have been essentially wiping out total discretionary spending for the federal government, which wasn't going to or was unlikely to happen. But when I talked with Edward Lopez, he put it from the Independent Institute. He put it a little differently. He basically said DOGE worked politically, even if there's not verifiable cost savings for taxpayers. So it was a political win. It polled well for Trump. So even without like a legal authority or a final report, it may have done well for Trump's base.
Yeah, I mean, people are still talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. You've got the ongoing investigations that the vice president's leading to go after, like Medicaid fraud and all of the different issues around the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the One Big Beautiful Bill. it's going to cost some states hundreds of millions of dollars if they don't get their overpayments down for SNAP. But what's the White House saying about this? Because, I mean, they came out with a bang talking about the Department of Government Efficiency. What are they saying now?
So that's right. Trump, when he first announced it, he said it was going to be the Manhattan Project of government cost cutting. We were going to
be huge. It's going to be huge.
He did say that repeatedly. I reached out to the White House. Davis Engel basically got back to me. They didn't really answer my questions, but they did say that this was a sign of significant progress. So they defended the concept, but didn't really answer any of my specific questions.
Now, in that hearing last Tuesday you reported on, Vogt had this to say.
You all passed many of the reductions that DOGE found just through the normal appropriations process when you ended the year so much lower than the year before. We did some of that in the rescissions package. And so many of the fruits of their labor are sprinkled all across the government. But I'm always happy to work with you on what you feel like you need.
Well, Brett, have DOGE's fruits been sprinkled across the government?
So there's two parts to Vogt's claims that are worth looking at here. One, but only one of them really checks out. The rescission package, the $9.4 billion that Congress, that's real, that's codified, that was real savings. Speaker Johnson's office has tied that money directly to DOGE's findings, but the broader claim of DOGE's cuts essentially didn't really move the needle in terms of debt reduction or reducing taxpayers' costs. But as you mentioned earlier, the DOGE brand really did spread. I mean, mostly Republican states, but about 26 states picked up some form of DOGE or DOGE-like agency. There's a House subcommittee, so this effort isn't totally over, but there are signs that some progress was made, just not nearly as much as DOGE had set out at the beginning, and not nearly as much as I guess probably some would have hoped for.
Yeah, and as the Department of Government Efficiency came to a close July 4th, I'm curious how those DOGE cryptocurrency coins are going to sustain themselves. Brett Rowland with the Center Square, greatly appreciate your reporting on this. We'll talk again soon.